Well, we are accelerating now through the events. This is the Temple Student 8s event, Edinburgh University and the University of Exeter. That's the start. We're going to catch up now to where they've gone. They've blasted off like two rockets. And we're now back live down the track. What's going on here? Edinburgh University looking strong. University of Exeter looking a bit more laboured.
Yeah, it just looks like the Edinburgh crew is in that more dynamic rhythm. They're moving. You talked about chaining earlier, making sure they're on top of things. Just saw the Cox just making sure that she was, or they were clear of how close the crew from Exeter was next to them.
Yeah, this angle's always a bit tough. It looks like they're a bit closer because, you know, we can't quite see where the kind of perpendicular line across the course is. It looks like Edinburgh are pretty comfortable at this point, actually. But the umpire is warning them. And Mark was just staring at the screen. I think you could see, Mark, that they were straying towards the centre. These crews have got to keep in their lanes, haven't they? And you can see, look, there's almost an overlap still. Yeah, exactly. You can see the umpire there kind of telling Lucy, who's the Cox of the kind of Edinburgh crew, to move back to her station. And if you look at the umpire's launch, they are directly in the middle of the course. So we don't have any kind of buoy lines in the middle there, but that is your reference to see which side the crew should be on. And if they impede across the other side, the umpire will let them know. That's right, you shouldn't impede, you shouldn't impair, and if it affects the outcome, the umpire can choose to disqualify you, so you want to be very careful. And actually, if you're in the boat, you know, you really don't want to be warned by the umpire. You don't want to be stressed and hassled about your steering. You know, it will slow you down. I think they're coming quite close to the booms on the right of our picture there, the Edinburgh crew. Maybe they've overcorrected a little bit, haven't they? That was really close, and you talk about that interference. The last thing you want as a crew, as an umpire, warning you while you're in your rhythm, you're in your kind of flow of how you're kind of moving together. You don't want to have disruptions, and sometimes, as you can see, what just happened back there previously was that they oversteered and now they've come back to where they need to be. Yeah, so these two crews, I think, met in the Metropolitan Regatta in the C final. The Edinburgh crew were first and the Exeter crew were fifth. So the Exeter crew going into this will have known that form, and they're potentially a struggle to kind of think about, how do I motivate myself when I came fifth against somebody who was first in that? How do you go into something when you know the form guide is against you? It's a tough one to do that, isn't it? So Edinburgh coming underneath us, they didn't have that problem. They had some level of confidence as they came into this. Exeter knew it was going to be a bit of a tall order, and indeed it's proving just that as we look down on the beautiful blue of the Edinburgh crew. Mark and I were talking earlier about wanting to have a dark puddle. I'd say that a little bit more kind of washy. You can see the whiteness of the blades coming out of the water there. There's something perhaps for them to work on as they try to go through the rounds of this competition, Mark. And it won't just be a technical thing. I think, well, we talked about the Cox earlier on. If you are going to use a rudder, be conscious and cautious, because there's not much space out there. If you do kind of oversteer, it will kind of affect the speed, but they've got back on track. So here we are looking at the Edinburgh crew and Lucy Evans, you mentioned earlier, Mark. You can see her calling them on. You can actually see how warm it is out there with the sweat on the athletes. It's really warmed up today. It's not the heat wave conditions we had in the last couple of days in the southeast of England and across much of Europe, but it's still pretty warm. And a final push from the University of Exeter crew. Just want to name check Edward Clark, Ewan Simmons, Daniel Taylor, Arthur Lindsay Lewis, Louis Lees, James Pollock, Ben Duffy, Sam Beresford, Cox by Frederick Darley. That's the crew from University of Exeter. This was their Henley. Credit to them for being here through the event, and it's Edinburgh who take the win in the Student Open 8s. They'll be through to the next round of the Temple.